The FOI did show there were only 14 patrolling days in April 2019. Did the minister come back to this just based on the figures
in that month period before the... So if I can once again just confirm, for the month of November there were in fact 84 patrol days. There were then 82 patrols in December of 2018 and 114 in January 2019, 102 in February 2019 and 127 in March 2019.
I will just state again my request for the information I sought earlier on and you took on notice in terms of day-by-day breakdowns. Chair, through you, I don't have additional questions on that line. I do want to move on to another matter, and I wonder how much time I have left in my 10-minute allocation.
You have 1 minute left.
Well, then why don't I conclude there, flagging that I would like to come back in this outcome. We have several matters in this outcome that are unrelated to this line of questioning.
I'll do a lap and come back to you.
Thank you.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Chair.
You have 10 minutes.
Thank you. First of all, Mr Outram, I just want to compliment the government from the Abbott onwards, Prime Minister Abbott onwards, on the wonderful job they've done in tightening up the borders with regard to the boats. And we understand the problem is difficult and it relies a lot on intelligence, not just brute volume. Could you tell us, though, how many asylum seeker claims are backlogged for final resolution of their claims by the courts?
That's probably not a question for me, Senator, actually.
Mr Pizzolo and
Yep.
Yes.
his people, who will now come to the table.
Madam Chair, just seeking your guidance. Technically, we're in outcome 2, but obviously I'm very happy to assist the committee as best as I can, but just to draw attention to the fact that the question pertains to outcome 2.
That is a good point.
I'm happy to come back. I've got another line of questions.
If you could focus on the ones that fall within outcome 1, that would be ideal.
We consulted and thought that they did, but okay, my apologies. I want to go to a series of questions about entry to data in personal phones, emails and text messages electronically. In a briefing provided to Senator Hanson from Minister Dutton's office, it was suggested that warrants are required to access metadata being collected on everyday Australians and that only 2 agencies are authorised to access that metadata. Over the last 12 months, how many times has individual metadata been accessed?
Mr Hansford might come forward to address that. As a matter of fact, we maintain some relevant statistics that might assist in the answering of the question. Mr Hansford. Perhaps for the benefit of Mr Hansford, Senator, could I ask that the question be repeated?
Over the last 12 months, how many times has individual metadata for electronic communications, phones, text messages, emails been accessed?
So, Hamish Hansford, First Assistant Secretary, National Security and Law Enforcement Policy Division. So, of the 20 enforcement agencies in the 18-19 period, there were 295,000.
As best as I can, but just to draw attention to the fact that the question pertains to outcome 2.
That is a good point.
I'm happy to come back. I've got another line of questions.
If you could focus on the ones that fall within outcome 1, that would be ideal.
We consulted and thought that they did, but okay, my apologies. I want to go to a series of questions about entry to data in personal phones, emails and text messages electronically. In a briefing provided to Senator Hanson from Minister Dutton's office, it was suggested that warrants are required to access metadata being collected on everyday Australians and that only 2 agencies are authorised to access that metadata. Over the last 12 months, how many times has individual metadata been accessed?
Mr Hansford might come forward to address that. As a matter of fact, we maintain some relevant statistics that might assist in the answering of the question. Mr Hansford. Perhaps for the benefit of Mr Hansford, Senator, could I ask that the question be repeated?
Over the last 12 months, how many times has individual metadata for electronic communications, phones, text messages, emails been accessed?
So, Hamish Hansford, First Assistant Secretary, National Security and Law Enforcement Policy Division. So, of the 20 enforcement agencies in the 18-19 period, there were 295,691 authorisations for the disclosure of historical telecommunications data. That does not, of course, include the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation that reports in a separate classified annual report.
Thank you. Of those, how many
Wait till the Senator
occasions,
question about metadata.
It's data retention.
Data retention.
Yes, same, yeah.
on how many of those occasions, Mr Hansford, was a warrant required?
For data retention purposes.
Data access purposes.
So there is no warrant required for metadata.
So that means there were no applications for warrants.
No. But there are different types of ways that law enforcement can obtain data. So metadata is usually done through an internal authorisation, unless, of course, it relates to journalist information warrants, which then have a separate process. There could be information that relates to stored communications, which requires a warrant. There could be in relation to telecommunications interception information, which is kind of live information that requires a warrant. So the specific answer to your question on telecommunications data, there would be no warrants that would be required.
So warrants are only required for stored data on a phone, for example.
That's one element of what a warrant could cover, yes.
Okay. So what were the other 295,000 accesses?
What were they?
What do they cover, and how did
It's
people get
important
access to
to
it?
spell out that that doesn't relate to content.
That's right. So as the Secretary just indicated, the requests for metadata don't relate to content. There's two particular aspects. There's one that involves a subscriber check. So, for example, it might be my name and my number, and that's a straight data
So that's one of the
request.
295,000?
Yeah, that's right. So that's one component. The other component is traffic data, which then might give the contents of, so it might give the call charge record of my phone, but not the contents.
So what about access to the contents within a phone or text messages? And
So any access to content a warrant is required.
and there were no warrants issued? No warrants even applied for?
So in the 18-19 period, yes, there were 3,561 interception warrants that were issued to interception agencies. There were also 1,252 stored communication warrants.
How many was that again, sorry?
1,252 stored communication warrants. And then there were also a number of surveillance device warrants and computer access warrants issued in 2018-19. So in 2018-19, there were 740 surveillance device warrants issued to law enforcement agencies.
So what was that number again, sorry?
740 surveillance device warrants.
Thank you.
There are also 31 retrieval warrants, which is where you go and retrieve a surveillance device. And there were also 8 computer access warrants issued. So that gives you a sense about some of the warrants that were issued across the nation for the 20 law enforcement agencies and law enforcement and corruption agencies.
So it's quite a complex field.
There's a range of warrants, yes.
Okay. Is the information you're giving subject to an audit by an independent body?
So the Commonwealth Ombudsman has an auditing type function, and for ASIO, the Inspector General of Intelligence and Security has an oversight mechanism for ASIO. But I could also refer you to the work that the department does every year in both the Telecommunications Interception and Access Act and the Surveillance Devices Act annual reports. We comprehensively report on all of the statistics relating to warrants, including breaking down the warrants as per crime type or offence type, actually. So you can get a sense about what are the types of criminal investigations that at a macro level the nation is looking at every year and investigatory agencies are looking at.
Okay, thank you. I'll just come back to repeat some questions that I asked of ASIO with regard to border security. Given the recent, and Minister, the information was accessed, you asked a question before, Minister, the information was accessed primarily from scientific journals, CSIRO's own bulletins, and the media to some extent, but the media was a small extent. This is about CSIRO collaborating with the Chinese. Given the recent expressed concerns about the wide extent of spying by foreign agents in Australia, is the partnership between CSIRO and China by way of the Centre for Southern Oceans Hemisphere Research of concern to national security?
The Secretary is able to assist.
Senator Roberts, I listened to the Director General's evidence in response to your question earlier today, and I certainly don't have anything to add, save for your reference to scientific journals. I think you classified in 3 areas: scientific journals, CSIRO's own pronouncements,
Yep.
and I think some media reporting, I think you said, are in the minority. I think, and I won't speak on behalf of Mr Burgess, but I'm sure that he would associate himself with this sentiment, unless he and I eyeballed each individual reference. I'd be very surprised, for instance, I say, but I'll check, that any CSIRO bulletin would say that we're undertaking classified research.
I'd be surprised too.
Well, indeed. So I don't know how you can get to a position of asserting through, by way of the premise of your question, that there is classified research being inappropriately shared that would, I think, as I heard you this morning refer to it, or earlier this afternoon I should say, that would allow from a standoff satellite distance, the location of submarines. I think you said to the depth of 500 metres. I will personally review the CSIRO bulletins to which you refer. You'll be able to knock me over with a feather if those CSIRO documents, I'll check, refer to that research in those terms. If you care to assist either myself or the Director General to perhaps send us the references to the scientific journals that you're drawing on, I'd very happily review those. But beyond those comments, which are really about process, I don't have anything to add to Mr Burgess's evidence.
Yeah, my purpose is not to knock anyone over with any feathers or anything else.
You'd surprise me greatly if the CSIRO was running around in its bulletin saying we've got a magical way of seeing submarines rendering the ocean transparent, and we reckon we might just put that in hock with a research partnership with a foreign country. I'll have a look, but I mean, I heard things, you hear things, but I'd be very surprised.
The purpose of my question went to not the intent of the research, but the possibility that that research could be used for other purposes by the Chinese.
I understand, Senator, but to draw that inference, you've got to take a number of logic. I mean, we all hear things, but you've got to take a logic jump that says oceanographic research ... eliminate dots gets you to an ability to see through water to the depth of 500 metres, and it, unbeknownst to anyone in the Commonwealth, that this has been perhaps unwittingly or unknowingly trafficked to a foreign power. I heard Mr Burgess's evidence. I think he said he wouldn't have anything to add in a public forum, even if it was of direct knowledge to him, but I'll take it upon the department's behest to look at those journals and those scientific and those CSIRO bulletins. If there's anything else I could possibly come back with, I will.
Thank you very much. I don't think the CSIRO is in the business of doing clandestine activities for foreign agencies. So, but we are concerned about border security and about security of our nation.
We are, Senator. You said to me that you've drawn from scientific journals. Well, I'd be interested to know what they are. I think you said, and I might have misheard you, and I do apologise if I did, CSIRO bulletins, and then you said, I think media reports, although
Correct.
I think you said
they're the three.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'd like to, to my own satisfaction, source those references.
And my office, I undertook to give Minister Cash a reply to her question. So I'm happy to do that. My concern goes to inadvertent collaboration that might lead to the Chinese using that information, and surely that's a valid question to
Well, without
question our
accepting
security
the
over.
premise of and the inference that I draw from your question, Mr Burgess said that gave you the evidence he gave you. I'll look at those journals myself, and if there's anything I can possibly assist the committee with, I will.
Well, Mr Burgess actually didn't give us much of a reply, and that's not being critical of him. He directed us to defence, so I thought I'd ask here as well. So thank you very much for your answers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Senator Antich, you've got the call.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions in relation to the issue of the organisation Hezbollah. Can the department please just confirm what the current status of that organisation is in relation to Australian law.
Ms Geddes can come forward and assist, but if you're asking in relation to its listing, it's a matter of public record that it's not listed under the Criminal Code, but Ms Geddes will further assist.
Linda Geddes, Deputy Secretary, Citizenship and Social Cohesion in the department. There is one wing of the organisation, thank you, that is listed, the ESO.
The ESO, and is it correct to say that that the military wing, of so-called military wing of the organisation, is not considered to be a terrorist organisation?
It is not listed as a terrorist organisation.
I'm interested in that because it's my understanding that in, for example, 2013, a political official of Hezbollah, Anwar Mossami, said that everyone is aware of the fact that it is one body. Its military and political